Rich trying to swing there alone. It pinballs to the crease. Score!
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I am John. What's going on, everybody?
And we have one half of the Mats, Hoagie being that half. Not going to say the lesser or the greater of the two, but regardless, he's here. What's up, man?
I'm back, boys. What's going on?
And
John's
on
worst
that
nightmare.
note, Casey's on a new weight loss plan right now, so he's got to take the night.
Poor guy. Poor guy. But anyways, there's a good bit to talk about. Not even going to worry about recapping games because it was just L's across the board. Regardless, we're moving on to bigger and worse conversations. Let's be honest. John brought up a good point in the group chat here earlier this week where typically by this time of year, or at least Thanksgiving being kind of the benchmark, we really start to understand what we have in this team, and we understand where this team's at, where it's heading, and what the rest of the season could potentially look like. Given the recent string of really less than successful hockey we can talk about, where is this team currently, and is it indicative of where this team will end up at the end of the season? So, John, you brought this topic up. I think that you should take things and let's just see where it goes.
Was it Herm Edwards that once said we are who they thought they were?
What is that?
Or we who we
No,
are?
who's
No,
the?
it's Dave Scott that said we are what we are.
No, it was the coach for the Arizona Cardinals, Dennis something.
Is it Dennis? Dennis Green?
Denny Green. Yep.
We are who we thought. You sure that was?
We are who they thought they were.
Herm Edwards?
They are who we thought they were.
Something along those
It
lines.
wasn't Herm Edwards was shit. There's another one from Herm Edwards. I just can't remember. But it's Dennis Green. He was the Cardinals coach at the time.
Well, whatever. Whoever was a football coach that said it. I mean, I think, you have to applaud their effort, right? They're trying, which I'm kind of getting sick and tired of hearing about. But we are icing an AHL roster, at least in terms of forwards, and it's finally starting to show in the results. This team is a bottom of the Metropolitan Division team. I think that it's slowly starting to show that, and that's where they're going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have so much more to say, but I want to take this in segments because I do have a very passionate soliloquy I'd like to throw in there at some point. But I'm going to let Hoagie speak for that 3 seconds that he has written down.
Before you cut me
All right.
off.
Your timer starts now.
Okay, anyway.
What are your thoughts on it all, Hoagie?
I mean, we can only get excited about hard work ethic and goaltending for so long. It's catching up to us. Someone else put it out there. We have 3Cs, 4Cs, AHLers in our first line, second line. It's tough to watch night in and night out. I mean, McEwen's on the second line, somehow producing where he shouldn't be. But I mean, this is what we thought we would see from games 1 through 5, and it's followed to us.
Yeah, you touched on goaltending. I mean, we all know the stellar start that Carter Hart had to the season. It was just completely out of this world, playing like a 9.46 after I want to say 7, 8, 9 games. The past 5 games, in each game, he has not posted a save percentage better than 889.
Right.
He has let up, 8, 13, 16, 19 goals in 5 games, just shy of 4 per game. And he's coming back down to earth. Everything was a loss, a shootout loss, an overtime loss, 3 regulation losses. goaltending is going to be the Achilles heel of this team this year. I think we can all kind of agree on that, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, just because like if the goaltending isn't stellar, we don't stand a chance because the rest of the team can't hold its own.
Yeah, that's their crutch that
the
they're going to fall back on.
Right.
Score.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, sure, you could say, well, they scored 4 against Montreal. Like, it's Montreal. Let's take that with a dose of reality there.
Right.
But it's
Could we for a
frustrating.
second? Could we for a second just hang out in Montreal for a moment? I know people hate this conversation, but I have to bring it up. Twice we could have drafted Cole Caulfield.
Don't do it,
dude.
Twice. I'm sorry, but I have to because
not
this
wrong.
is a bigger. This is a bigger conversation that I want to have in this show regarding Chuck Fletcher and all this. We talk about top end talent. We talk about top end talent and this need for skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that I'm mad about the Cam York pick. I'm not saying that I don't like Cam York, but like, look what this guy's doing already.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we need. I don't understand what is wrong with this franchise, and I'm not blaming the GM or anything. We can't seem to have anybody healthy, and we can't seem to pick the right effing guy. Like, it just pains me that it was kind of clear that Cole Caulfield had scoring capabilities, and we had 2 opportunities to draft this guy, and we didn't do it.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, but I want Hoagie to go first here. I shouldn't even say devil's advocate, but regardless, what are your thoughts, Hoagie?
I'm tired of the revisionist drafts.
It's not revisionist though. He would have been. He was the pick before York in almost everybody's eyes.
And Shane Wright was supposed to go number 1 this year. And he went 4th.
But
I'm just
tired of talking. But
yeah, you're tired of talking about it because it's freaking reality that they've got the better player.
Yeah, it's reality. We have
as
to
of
live
right
with it.
now, yeah.
I mean, okay, but as of right now, this is what we could use. And I'm not saying that I don't think Cam York is going to be something, but holy crap, could we use? I mean, we've already locked in our decor for the next 10 years. Man, could we use a scoring freaking winger? That's all.
Yeah,
we don't have to dive any more into this. It's just
on this team, you would have Zach McEwen and Scott Lawton pass to him on the second line. Come on.
Fair point. I'm with Hoagie. I hate let's bring it back up and let's just harp on it. Like I don't care about what happened. What was it, 3 or 4 years ago now?
No,
someone's upset downstairs. I don't care anymore. Like I just don't. I don't have it in me to care anymore about a pick that happened back then. And yes, you're right. Cole Caulfield should have been the one taken there. But at the end of the day, he wasn't. And this is what we're dealt with. And shut up. I'm not done yet.
I'm talking about what happened 45 years ago. We talk
about
what Ron Hextall did to this franchise.
Because there's lingering effects. There's lingering effects from what Hextall did. He ran the team.
It's still digging up the past. All I'm saying is this team would have been in a better spot if we had a freaking Cole Caulfield than Cam York marinating in the AHL.
What's had more of an impact on this team right now? What Hextall did as the general manager of this team, or one pick that we didn't pick Cole Caulfield?
You can't say you don't want to talk about the past if you're bringing up things that Hextall did.
But you're not understanding my point, is that what Hextall did in the past is still impacting the team today.
Okay, so what Chuck Fletcher didn't do in that draft is depleting us of top-end talent and preventing us of what we could be doing today.
But it doesn't matter what he didn't do because he did something, and he took Cam York over Cole Caulfield, and that's a matter of fact.
Listen, man, all I'm saying is when you watch that guy play, it's like crap. Okay, that's all I'm saying. We could have had. I'm not blaming Chuck Fletcher. I'm just saying this is typical freaking Flyers hockey, where we can't even get that right. And the guy was just sitting there waiting to be taken. I remember when he was drafted, when the draft was happening and the Flyers picked, they go, from the USN TDP.
And how excited we all got.
Yes. And they go, Cam York. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You were also the one that were like, you know what? This is a decent pick. Like, and I remember listening to you about that.
And I still believe that. I'm not, and it's just like, you, me, Hoagie, maybe Casey. I don't know what Casey does, but like we love the sport of hockey, right? I mean, I could
Correct.
throw on a game. I could throw on Columbus and Florida and enjoy the game, and they're both teams that I truly could care less about. But I
Yeah.
just like to sit down and watch a game of hockey. I could sit down and watch a junior game of hockey. When
Yep.
I throw on another two teams, it fascinates me the amount of skill that's in the NHL. It
Mhm.
fascinates me the amount of exciting talent that seems to be on every other team but ours. So I'm sorry that when I look at a guy like Cole Caulfield, who we could have had, and I'm not saying that Chuck Fletcher got the pick wrong because I think it's way too early, but when we are so depleted of any sort of exciting talent like that, I
Mhm.
can't help but be like, "Gah," when I love the sport of hockey and my team is like an ECHL, AHL tryout squad.
Okay. Now, I
Yeah,
think,
but
and I
we've
could
got
be
Tippett now. We've got Frost.
plenty of skill,
We've got all these young
plenty of
guys.
skill.
Yeah, they're all right there.
We-
Thanks, Bill.
What I want to bring up, and I believe it was LePerrier that said it. Take that for what you will, but defensemen. We all know defensemen. We all know that it takes them a little bit longer to acclimate themselves to be what they're going to be at the NHL.
Sure.
So I'm understanding of that, and it remains to be seen what Cam York and the impact he's going to have on
Sure.
the game at the NHL level. Now, yes, we're seeing Cole Caulfield absolutely tear it up right now, which is great. I'm happy for him. Wish him nothing but the best. Awesome. Am I jealous that it's not with the Flyers? Sure. But think about where that team is right now. If it would be in a spot in which him playing that way is going to make this team better and a contender, even, we could say, would it be wasted if he's on the team like right now? Like if it was Cole Caulfield, not Cam York, and McEwen, Hayes, Konechny, Farabee.
I mean, look at
and that's that.
Montreal. I mean, Montreal's in a similar boat to
They're
us
a year
right
and a half
now.
removed from a Stanley Cup final, though.
Okay, dude, you know that has like 6 asterisks on it.
Stanley Cup final is a Stanley Cup final. That's
They
the way
had-
I look at it.
Hogue, you agree with me on this one, right? This is a little different.
Yeah, they had like the easiest way to get in, right?
Right. I mean, and then they sucked the next year. It was, I mean, as fluky as you could possibly get.
Right.
And here's the thing, Derek. Here's the thing that I think I'm getting at, and kind of to answer what you were saying, or reply to what you were saying, because I don't think you really had a question.
Yeah,
But
I didn't ask.
Cole Caulfield would at least give me something exciting to watch. Right now, there's nothing exciting about this team. I mean, Carter Hart was fun for like the first 7 games, but now I'm no longer excited about that. I could care less that this team comes back from 2-goal deficits and puts in a good heave-ho effort. I just want somebody who's going to make a highlight from now and then. And I just think that like a guy like Cole Caulfield would put butts in seats. He would just make somebody excited to watch the team. And right now, I'll watch every game, but it ain't exciting.
Now, here's a scenario that I'm
Owen
interested
Tippett's
to
not
hear
doing
your
that for you?
response.
No.
Not Wade Allison either.
There's a lot of people out there that argue that he's the one doing it.
I mean,
I don't see it.
relatively,
I'm not defending him.
relatively speaking, like I like what Owen Tippett is doing, but it's just like, again, I know injuries have done a lot to this team, but
It's not on the level of a Cole Caulfield. Plain and simple,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
it's a bunch of AHL
He should be
fringe
playing on the
guys.
third line.
So we're in the same breath as a hypothetical here. Let's talk about Bobby Brink. If
Sure.
let's say Bobby Brink comes in, and I'm not saying he plays to the level of a Cole Caulfield, but if he comes in and plays well and is maybe scoring, a goal every other game, a goal every third game, whatever it might be, ends up with like a 20, like at his peak, like a 25, 30 goal season, maybe, let's say. Does that ease the pain a little bit for you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's hard to explain. Like, it's not like I'm looking at that draft and going, God, like we screwed up. But like the people like to do with Jay O'Brien, like Keandre Miller, like God, he was waiting there for us. I just think about what I would enjoy watching a team that's still struggling, right? And I think that that's something that I could throw on the TV and be like, well, at least I get to watch this guy play for the next 60 minutes. So like long term, Bobby Brink does it and Cam York can be a top 4 guy. Great, we made the right decision. But like for right now, with the product that I have to sit down and watch, like I would kill to have a young Cole Caulfield on the ice just so I could be excited about something.
But is your disdain for that pick the product of the fact that this team sucks right now? Like, is that
Absolutely.
just magnifying it all?
Well, I think so. I mean, and I think it's more along the lines of like, I think if you were to say compared to what we thought this team was going to be at the beginning of the year, right? They are better than we thought they were going to be, right? I just think effort wise, they're better than what we thought they were going to be.
So
right?
far, sure.
So far, sure. I think that like if there was just somebody that gave me a little bit more promise for the future as far as skill, like whether it be Cole Caulfield or anybody else, like I'd feel a little bit better about it. Because right now I watch this team, and I mean, Hoagie, I want you to say something about this, but I watch this team and I go, okay, for where we are in this span of Flyers life or whatever we're doing, whether this is a rebuild or a retool or a whatever, I can live with this.
2 to 3 years
However,
away, 3 years away.
But then I look at it and go, well, what's actually going to be different next year? Because you have all of these guys locked in long term who can't seem to be healthy. You have one guy coming off the books. All of the assets you could have traded over the past few years, you've locked in long term. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm getting irritated that there's just nothing that's keeping me interested anymore.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested to see, and I'm sorry, Hoagie, I keep taking away from your talking points here too. I'd be interested to see the contracts that Fletcher dished out when he was with the Wild, and how many are still on the team now that there's new leadership. But regardless, Hoagie, you take the mic here.
I mean, I'm in the same boat as John at that point. I feel like we're going to be running it back once again next year. JVR is coming off the books. We can't freaking wait for that. I said it to somebody at the Bruins game. Yeah, he's like, "Is that Kevin Hayes?" I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know he was on the Flyers." I was like, "How'd you not know? We signed him for 7 years for $7 million. Like, it was a big contract. We're stuck with him. Like, there's just these large contracts that are just going to hurt us in the long run. We have Risto, we have Sanheim, we have Couturier, we have Hayes, like I just mentioned. Like, it's just going to be kicking around and hoping it doesn't break on the way. We're kicking a glass bottle down the stairs, hoping it doesn't break on the way down. I feel like nothing's getting fixed at this point.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Every once in a while, I have
and I think, Derek, I want you to respond to this, Derek, but like I think the thing is there's this narrative that John Tortorella and Jason Martinez and all these people go, well, we're trying to figure out who's going to be here next year, right? We're trying to figure out who on this team isn't going to be around for the long term. And you think about the guys, okay, could it be Ristolainen? You're like, without thinking about the contracts for a second, could it be Ristolainen? Could it be Kevin Hayes? But every person that you have a question mark about, they're a long-term contract that I can't imagine anybody is going to take on, at least at a value that we feel good about getting it back.
That's like, to me, that's
I'll take that one.
That's already been determined. Like,
right,
we know who's going to be here. I mean, I'm just looking through Cap Friendly right now. Like, you've got Hayes signed until the end of 2026. You've got Konechny signed through 2028. Lawton, Delorier, they're here until the end of 2026. Like, there's a few RFAs.
Travis Sanheim, we've decided to lock out.
Kiefer Bellows, Noah Cates, Zach McEwen, and Morgan Frost are RFAs. Zamula's an RFA, but like your defense, Sanheim's locked up through 2028. I think 2029 actually now. Ristolainen, Provorov's here until the end of 2025. Like,
how's that dude, right?
And
Ryan Ellis.
Ryan Ellis, Jesus. He'll be here, and I don't know, who knows. But my question to that, I guess, to your question would be, if we know who we want to be here, how realistic is it to ship the guys out that shouldn't be here? Like, we can't trade Ristolainen the
No.
way he's playing right now. We can't. Sanheim as well. Like, yeah, he had a goal the other night. Woo-hoo. That's what, 3 points on the year. It's for a guy that, you know, people rave about his offensive prowess. I'm not intrigued, and can't trade Kevin Hayes.
Nope.
Well, I'll revisit that. I'll revisit that. But Konechny absolutely has value, but enough that I think he should stay around. Absolutely think he should stay around. Then what do we do about Joel Farabee? Is that a guy? I mean, you can't trade Delorier, no trade clause. Lawton, I think, should stick around. Tippett's going to be up after next year. Like, it's just too difficult to really, it's a guess. We don't know because we can't move half these people.
Well, that's the thing. And Hoagie, to me, if you're thinking about this, right, and it's like if you were to take away contracts from it, right, and be like potential guys who aren't fitting into what Tortorella is trying to do, right? Hayes, Ristolainen.
Yep.
Who else?
I'd argue Sanheim to an extent.
Sanheim, okay. Way to go, Chuck. But it's like I'm tired. Like, even in the last press conference, Tortorella's like, we're trying to figure out who's going to be here long term. Well, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but Chuck's already decided that. And you know, whether or not you think Kevin Hayes and Rasmus Ristolainen are a fit, they ain't going nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the hard part of it. I mean, Chuck Fletcher's dug this team in quite the hole. There's no two ways about that. With the contracts that he's dished out, the decisions that he's made, as to what John alluded to earlier with the Caulfield, sure, you could add that to the list. Back to the original discussion in terms of finding out who we are. I think that we're getting a better picture considering past 2-3 years we haven't had an identity at all. We haven't. We're harder to play against now. Sure, you could argue that. We have guys that, you know, aren't Oscar Lindblom that are going to step up to the plate when someone's about to throw down. Like, that's, you want to call it encouraging, sure. I just have a hard time with the fact that John had mentioned, obviously, this is a very skilled league, and we have little to none when it comes to skill. So where does that put us in the ranks? You know what I mean?
Right.
Hoagie, you got to have something to say about that.
Where's the person in the ranks of talent? We have no talent.
Like, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Hoagie, what do we even have you on here, buddy?
Screw you, John. I do the banners. That's all I do.
All right.
I don't know.
Well, you don't need to be on the show for that. We can just kick you your cut under the table.
What cut?
Exactly.
You know that ad revenue, right?
Derek, what was your question?
I'm not even. I was kind of. What was
so
it?
Like we talked about how like we're doing our best at this point to form some type of identity, and we're getting there, but we're not nearly as skilled as anybody would want us to be. So like, where, even if we form that identity and there's no skill, like, who really are we at that point? Because there needs to be a certain level of skill to compete with everybody else in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're a team that the opposition knows we're not an easy out, where it's like you can't take these guys for granted because they might sneak away a win, maybe sneak away with a win. But at the end of the day, we're always going to lose more than we win at this point. It's just
we're bottom,
and it's hard. It's hard because, like, if you look aside from Kevin Hayes, our entire top six is hurt. You know, I mean, and again, to me, that falls on the general manager. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's like there was no preparation after that fact. It was like our top six, and then we don't know what. And that's why we're in the position we're in.
I won't lie. I am anxious because within the next year, we could potentially see guys like Tyson Forrester make the jump. I mean, depending on how Denoye is playing, like there's a few guys I've got my eye on when it comes to the minors. I mean, add Cutter Gauthier to the mix.
Sure.
Like there are some guys on their way that could potentially help this team in the very near future.
Sure.
It's going to be a matter of player development, and that has not been the Flyers' strong suit for insert year here.
Right. Well, I mean,
you know,
and you also have to think about it where it's like, are you putting these players in a position where they're doing too much too soon? You know, like, I mean, you throw in a Tyson Forrester, it's like, well, you got to put him in the top 6 because holy crap, what else are we going to do with him? You know, we have nobody else to fill those roles, and maybe he's not quite ready for that. So I just think like that's the tricky part.
So we talked about it last week in terms of the third line being just kind of like the island of lonely toys, if you want to call it that. Like maybe that's a decent launch point for him. Like establish the fact that we have an NHL line that's capable of playing to a third line capacity. It maybe, you know, pair him with somebody, you know, a little more skilled when Atkinson comes back, because it looks like that's coming up soon. Right. Like Atkinson can come back, and then that bumps somebody down to the third line that can help with him. Maybe a Farabee. Like I don't know.
Who was on a line with Hayes last night? Was it Max Willman and who was the other guy?
Max Willman.
Was it Patrick Brown?
Oh boy. That makes me so happy that I didn't watch it.
Oh,
last night was date night.
Like, it's just like, what in the world is happening here?
That is much less than ideal. Oh my god.
I mean, and again, I know
it was Willman and Brown.
Like, no, sorry. Like, not even arguably. Your best center, the healthy center right now, is put on a line with those two chuckleheads.
And he was demoted to the third line too.
Right.
It wasn't even the first.
So here's a question. We saw Farabee slot in at center last year. You think that's an option? Maybe that gets his play jump, you know, like he starts kind of playing better?
I mean, I just don't think that's a long-term plan. And I mean,
oh sure.
It's not a long-term either.
Like how long into the future are we looking right now though? I mean, be honest.
I mean, when it comes to a guy like Farabee, you want him to start to catch his stride at the position that he's going to play in.
Well, yeah, I can understand that, sure. But given the fact that we're without Couturier, now Konechny's out too, it's like we're just so thin everywhere. But why the hell not?
I mean, right now, all it is throwing something up against the wall and hoping that it sticks.
Sure, that's what it's been.
Right. Well, with Farabee missed all of camp. He didn't play any training camp games. Like
neither did Carter Hart.
I feel like he's still getting his. Yeah, well, at least he participated in camp. I think Farabee's still getting his wheels under him and still kind of catching up to the rest of the guys here. I mean, it's not helping that he's playing third line minutes at half the time. So I do like that the line that he's playing on with Frost and Tippett. I think that's going to give him something because there have been nights where they're playing really well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Just don't know what to make of it.
You remember it was around this time last year. What are we going to talk about?
Yep.
I give it like a few more weeks, but we're going to be doing the same thing because I
have a feeling we're going to be talking about something here by Christmas time. I have a feeling there's going to be some news that we're going to talk about, and it has to do a lot with our next topic here. The evergreen subject that I feel like we've been talking about for quite some time now. Chuck Fletcher, how hot the seat is that he's sitting on currently. And I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think it's as hot right now as it's ever been, to the point where it doesn't surprise me one bit if he's gone by, latest Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the thing is too, I mean, you never know with Flyers ownership right now. Like
good point.
That's the wild card. But I think that if you think quickly about it and you go, well, the injuries, right? Like what is supposed to happen with this team? But if you dig a little bit deeper, and I think what we talked a lot about over the offseason was there was so little preparation for if and when this happened. And everything told you that there was a really good chance that this was going to happen because it's been happening the past 2 seasons where your more talented players are going to lose time due to injury. And Chuck Fletcher essentially did nothing to address it. It's like he has these moments where it's like in a vacuum, he makes a decent enough acquisition. Like I think getting Tony DeAngelo for what it was a great acquisition. Nick DeLaurier for what he is and what we needed, I think was a great acquisition. But long-term or like full long view plan, he has none. What is he thinking of signing Travis freaking Sanheim to an 8-year extension? It was an 8-year extension, right? Am I correct with that?
I think so, yeah.
An 8-year extension. When we're talking about if we're trying to figure out who is a part of the long-term solution to this team, he hasn't played a game yet, and we've already locked him up long-term. And he was by far our best trade chip.
Yeah.
You already have teams who are looking for defensemen. There's no plan here. I think that if Flyers ownership knows what they're doing, which again,
they don't.
Questionable.
There is no reason to hold on to this guy. You need a new voice, and you need somebody else who has an actual plan.
Well, let's be honest too. And you talked about the Tony DeAngelo signing. Like that's great. I think that was a good decision. But other than the Tony DeAngelo signing, and we're talking the entire tenure of Chuck Fletcher, what else does he have that he can hang his cap on and state this was a good idea, this benefited the team, I'm glad I made that decision?
I think Kevin Hayes at the time, like I think when you looked at like the current need, right? And I think that where he fit into this team on paper and his initial impact to the team.
Sure.
I would argue that was a good signing, and the reasons why it looks ugly now maybe are out of Hayes' control. He's probably doing more than he should be.
Like, I mean, and maybe that's a bad comparison because his first full year when he brought in Braun and Niskanen and then Hayes, like, okay, like you can hang your cap on that because you had a pretty good team. You put together a solid team, but recently at the very least, really just after that one season, the Tony DeAngelo thing is the only thing I can think of.
Atkinson when healthy.
Sure. Also, but you're getting rid of a quality player in Voracek, which obviously you have to trade quality for quality. I get that. The Atkinson trade worked. Acquiring Risto was, again, like you said, on paper at first seemed like a great idea. Now we're seeing that maybe it wasn't, but I don't know. That's a tough one.
Well, his downfall with that one was re-signing him.
Yeah.
Right. Doubling down.
I mean, and that's my problem. And then I'm going to shut up and let Hoagie have his 5 words. But like, there's just no long view with this. It's like, okay, I'm doing this now, and when we're not thinking about the repercussions or what's going to happen, in the future. Okay, Hoagie, your turn.
To be honest, I don't think his seat's hot at all. I think he's warming it himself, and it's nice and comfy, and he's not going anywhere. Because we expected this out of this team. We expected nothing except mediocrity once again. And I think he's just going to sit nice and comfy, and he's just going to keep on playing with the reins and pulling at bells and whistles and what have you. And we're about to go into a rough offseason of what the hell are we doing again? I don't want that. I just think he's comfortable, and I think the owners and management are comfortable with where we're at. Because I think at trade deadline, you have to get JV off the books. He's got to go. There's got to be a couple other pieces that I feel like that don't have to go.
Who?
I don't know. I just feel like there's.
But the problem is, Hoagie, there is no one.
I know. I mean, Travis Konechny, I can argue because he's having a quote-unquote career year until the injury. I feel like
the one
he could be a valuable
team you got to hold on to at this point.
He's a valuable trade piece at this point. You want to go the other way? I don't know.
You rarely see people with term be traded at the deadline too. Right. Like your only candidates here, you're looking at Braun. That's a $1 million price tag. You're looking at the next is Kiefer Bellows at 1.2, and it's like, what are you going to get for him?
Right.
You know,
nothing.
He can barely crack the lineup now.
Exactly.
He's not cracking the lineup.
JVR is your only
going
other
to the
guy.
playoffs.
And if you wouldn't have re-signed Sanheim, he'd have been great for that too.
That is the epitome of Chuck Fletcher has no clue what he's doing.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean,
and that's
why
his seat is incredibly hot for me. Like you had mentioned, John, about the injuries and stuff like that. The way I look at that situation is that yes, every team is going to deal with injuries.
Right.
It's a given. So what needs to happen then is you need to have people quality replacements. And I'm not talking about like, oh no, Crosby goes down. It's okay. We've got Malkin. Like that's just unrealistic. Like if we have guys that can slot into the lineup, that can play, that are good, that don't look out of place, that's what we need. But in order to have those guys, we need the cap room to bring them in. And we don't have that. And why don't we have that? Because of the decisions that Chuck Fletcher has made to this point. So it's a butterfly effect of things right now, but it ultimately rests with the decisions that Fletcher made that put them in this position. And now knowing that there's something going on, there's something in the water in Philly that guys can't stay healthy or just are completely injured all the time, you should be prepared for that. And they're not. They're clearly not prepared. There's only so many guys you can claim off waivers. There's only so many guys you can bring up from the Phantoms. Right. And we don't have that.
The
right
Minnesota AHL pool is running thin there, Chuck.
Yeah. His next call is going to be to like Gordon Bombay. Like, hey, how's Adam Hall doing? Or Adam Banks. Adam Hall. Jesus. There's a blast from the past.
You could even argue that the Tony DeAngelo trade was a dumb idea. Like,
there's a lot of people that do argue it.
Oh, just from the standpoint. From the standpoint where it's like, if you knew that you didn't have the assets to be a competitive team, why trade for this guy and lock him in for 2 years at that cap hit? You know, and I'm not somebody. I'm glad he's on this team. I think that he's providing them something that they needed. But like, you could argue that's another piece of evidence to the problem, where it's like you're just looking at this acquisition in a vacuum. You're not thinking about, okay, what is the direction of this team right now?
You could argue, though, that was a necessary payment for a guy like that at the time, because at that time, Sanheim wasn't extended. You really needed to find yourself a partner for Provorov, and you did.
Well, Sanheim didn't need to be extended at that point.
Exactly.
Right.
And that makes it even more questionable to me, because you just shelled out more money for Sanheim for a second pairing gig, whereas you could have took that money and tried to lock down DeAngelo long term, because at the very least right now, as it seems, that pairing's working well.
Right. Yeah, and I wasn't talking about like necessarily what we paid for Tony DeAngelo. I was just talking about like the acquisition in general, where it was like, you know, when we did that, everybody was like, okay, so now he's actually gearing up to go and get Johnny Gaudreau or do something to make this team competitive, because that's what that acquisition looked like.
Yeah, he was looking to turn the ship.
And then free agency happens, and you're going, okie doke.
Like,
maybe not.
Doing, Chuck?
All right, so we've got Tony DeAngelo, we've got these pieces, but we're gonna figure out who's a part of this long term. We're gonna come in with some decent cap space at the end of the offseason. We can trade JVR and Sanheim. Oh wait, like it never matches up. And Hoagie, I know I kind of hear where you're coming from, where it's like, I think that he's doing well enough considering what he has in front of him.
Right.
But there's one thing that ownership cares about, and that's money.
I know.
Money.
And eventually, buddy, people are going to, and I'm sure it's already happening, people are going to stop paying to go to these games, man.
I think it started in the offseason.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
I don't think that
as the season goes on, it's going to get worse. Absolutely.
And I think that is the driving factor behind ownership going, whether we think you're doing an okay job or not, we're not seeing the fiscal results that we need right now. You've got to go.
You could argue, though, bringing in Tortorella was a move that was conducive to Chuck thinking, you know, oh, this will put butts in seats, because we have a personality as a coach too now.
But
not just a good coach, but a personality.
but also would be promoting Danny Briere, because you know that the nostalgia would get people. Oh, here we go. We're going to turn it around.
And just a breath of fresh air too.
Sure.
Like the hype around Briere and the fact that everybody seems to think he's going to be a great GM. Like I'm one of those. I think Danny Briere could be a good GM. I do. I have nothing to support why I feel that way, but I just
like Danny Briere.
I got a hunch. But that I feel like in and of itself, just replacing Chuck with Briere would be enough to put a couple butts in the seats, because you're going to be hanging on every move he makes at that point. Like, especially if it's before the deadline, that's his true first test. So then you're like, okay, what's he going to do? Who's out of here? Who's he bringing in? What's the plan moving forward? And Briere's got one.
Right. And it brings excitement back. Back to what I was saying, right? It gives you something to be excited about. What John Tortorella has been able to do for these first, 15 to 20 games, right? That's what bringing in a new GM would do, at least for a little while. And that's where the Flyers have to get their excitement from, because the roster's just not going to do it.
Got to get your kicks somewhere.
I mean, ownership has to be looking over across the way at the Phillies as well. See how much revenue they brought in to the playoffs, the World Series, the NLCS, the World Series. Brought a ton of revenue. They've got to be like, all right, we're not pushing any needles. We haven't been pushing needles for the past couple of years.
I think they're pushing a few needles.
They're rearranging the deck
drapes.
furniture.
Yeah, the drapes. They've got to be. I don't want to say jealous, but they've got to be looking at that like.
That should be motivation.
Yeah, motivation. That's a great word.
Right.
Like they've got to be looking at that like, what the hell are we going to do? I think Danny Briere will do a great job if he is promoted to general manager. I'm just afraid of the background that's going to be behind him.
Well, that's always the problem, right? Like, who's actually making the calls, right?
You have Clark, you have Holmgren, you have a couple other the older guys that are in the.
They're getting up there in age, right? What do we got, about another 10 years?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Getting up there.
I don't know if I could take 10 more years of this, guys.
Right. I think if Briere does get promoted to general manager, I think you have to let him run the ship and run the ship his way. Not in a way that Hextall did, where he's closing doors and not talking to anybody. I think you need to let him have the reins and run with it.
You need to tell the alumni that they're alumni, and that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
go back
yes,
to
they have
Millersville.
roles, but they can't be making decisions.
I don't go back to Millersville and tell the president how to spend their money. Like, just because I paid you $100 fucking K.
That's almost the exact same thing, Derek. Thanks for that comparison.
I'm an alumni. I mean, that's how I link those two.
Did you bring them a Stanley Cup?
No, but I won multiple, and by that I could clothe an entire family with the t-shirts I won winning intramural championships. So
Look at you go.
I know a little something about winning
True
championships that some of these guys on the Flyers don't. Dodgeball was my forte.
I just think that the next thing they have to do is fire Chuck Fletcher. There is no choice here.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think he's getting fired, or do you think he's going to get quote unquote promoted?
Oh God!
If they promote him,
that's a theory.
That is it.
I know, but what
it is?
But I just don't understand why. Like, if there's somebody who's been around for a long time, like I get, like Holmgren, right? I get that. The guy has just bled Flyers hockey forever.
I don't even want Fletcher advising anyone on this team. Like a special advisor to the GM. Like, no. Get out, advise yourself out of office. Get that.
He can advise the janitors.
Would that just be because maybe they don't want to pay him a salary for doing nothing kind of thing,
That's, what? Yeah, that's probably exactly it. Because what's his contract?
I don't know. It's got to be coming up, right? Probably.
I'm sure.
5 years.
Yeah, that's probably what it's going to be. They'll be like, we're not going to pay you to do nothing. Go scout the kids over in Sweden.
Right.
I don't know.
Go scout Minnesota.
Yeah, like go home, sit at home when there's some, junior games, when there's some college games, go check out the Gophers.
Bring your book.
Yep.
Number 7. He was carrying that book around TD Garden on Thursday.
Did it look ratty?
I told you it looked ratty. It looked like an old
alliteration. Like that kid on That Jim Jones guy
Okay,
on Minnesota.
Point 4, Article C. It says, when in doubt, give him a really large contract.
Yeah.
Oh boy, who wrote that book for him? No, the hot
worked
seat
for Dad.
argument could span. I mean, good Lord, every game that passes is just gonna, I feel like, make it hotter. But at the same rate, I think that this will be worth revisiting when we get to Christmas. I'm anxious to see how this goes because I'll stand by it. I think he's gone before, but I don't know.
Well, I do think that you have to do it before the trade deadline. Like, don't let this guy have the trade deadline and then fire him.
No, that's just unnecessary damage at that point.
Right. Right.
He was
Who else is
screaming
he
that
going to
last
sign
year,
to an
too.
extension? JVR, you want another 5?
Oh,
Yeah. I know it's against the rules, but listen, Nick, we can sign you to like 3 or 4 more years, max out that contract at 8 years, and keep that no trade clause
They
going.
think Austin Matthews is going to get paid. Watch what I'm going to do to Nick Delorier.
Maybe it's a covert operation. Maybe he's going to take subpar players and sign them to some crazy contracts. So that way, Austin Matthews enters his contract negotiations and he's like, Nick Delorier's making $3 million a year when that contract ends up being done and he's in a couple more years. I should get 15.
Right.
And he's just going to screw all the other teams.
Is there
Maybe
a clause
there's a bigger
in-
plan.
Is there a clause in Chuck Fletcher's contract where anybody he signed goes with him when he gets fired?
That'd be genius.
phenomenal.
That
Maybe
would
they
be
put
genius.
that in the paperwork.
Right? Take your guys, go. Wherever you go, they go. Just
That would-
not with us.
I'm all for that. We're going to bring that to the Board of Governors meeting.
Let's do it. I think
All
we
right.
should crash that one.
Yeah. Well, you notice that like this was an incredibly negative episode because we didn't have Matt Casey going, well, I always like to think about positivity.
I think it needed to be. We've been somewhat positive and had some good conversations in regards to how exciting the team's been so far and stuff like
Sure.
that. But it's fallen back down to earth at this point, and it's just gonna keep falling back down to earth.
I'm
Falling
just
down the hell.
bored. I'm just bored watching the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't watch a single minute of the game against Montreal. It was date night at the Bob House. My wife and I went out. We
What'd you
had
do?
too much to drink, and we just had a good time.
That's not tough this morning.
Not. Yep. I will say my head was pounding this morning.
Good for you, buddy.
I just can't drink like I used to, man. Just can't do it. But regardless, that pretty much wraps up in terms of what we wanted to talk about. Is there anything you want to add, John? Because I'm sure there's something.
I don't think so. I think I said it all.
Shocking.
I mean, I talked a lot.
We know.
I mean,
What else
no,
is
I
there?
like. I hope that this team doesn't lose its competitive edge,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think that's the one thing that Tortorella can hang his hat on right now. So I hope that they remain competitive, but it's just like it's hard to get excited about it anymore.
I agree. Any lasting words in regards to the episode here, Hoagie?
Nope,
Not at all.
dude, you are
Every
wet
game is
blanket.
just. I know I am. No, I mean every game now is just it's getting worse and worse to watch. Like I'm not excited anymore.
Oh, it's lost
Have
its
Have you ever
luster
been
for you.
excited, Hoagie? You don't seem like an excited guy.
I'm just a naturally angry person, so
You get him a new bottle of bourbon, man. He gets real excited.
I mean, angry is not really the word I was gonna go for. I was gonna go for like dull.
Docile.
Man,
I think docile is a good one.
dull's a
nah,
good one.
not docile.
Not docile.
Dull can be good.
I just didn't want to say dull.
If you were to do one of those things where it's like your wife had to give 3 adjectives to describe you, Hoagie, what would they be?
Oh boy.
Should we bring her on to
I don't
discuss?
even want to go
Googling,
down.
he's Googling what is an
Absolutely
adjective.
not.
Put her on the spot. All right. Well, while you try to figure that out, Hoagie, I think we've missed the dad joke for the past couple weeks. I have. I don't care what John
haven't.
thinks.
No, we haven't.
Hit us with a
I
dad
know
joke.
you have. Hey, John, boobs.
Huh?
Identities.
Not gonna lie, buddy.
Identities.
You froze. Did you catch that, Derek?
Restart it. And
No,
it's
but now we
losing
know
its
the
luster.
punchline. Your
Wow.
joke is.
What do you call
What was
what do you call identical boobs?
Identities.
Identities. See, I got the answer.
Identities.
That's good.
All
That's
right.
good. I'll give you that one. All
Hold on.
right, man. Keep
Hold
it
on
rolling.
for
Let
that.
everybody know where they're going to find you.
Pod Street Host, Twitter app. You know it.
All right.
You
John
know it.
Gove.
Yep. You can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles, and it's great. Oh, and hey, real quick, thanks to Ireland. We got a real nice message from a gentleman in Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, at least, right? It's so cool to hear that somebody is listening to us out there. I'd like to find out what you do on your free time that makes you think that that's a good idea, my friend. But anyway, thank you for listening to us. It's really cool to hear.
It's like in Step Brothers, Prestige Worldwide. It's like Pod Street Worldwide.
It's like he just wants proof that Americans are actually
Oh, boy.
idiots.
Right. Living, breathing proof in the
Get
form
it.
of three schmucks.
And
right
I
here.
am that proof.
No, that's great. That's cool. It's always great to hear where everybody's at when they're listening. But in terms of the three schmucks that are on right now, you can find me on Twitter at Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter at Pod Street Gove. The Pod Street Bullies are on Twitter at Pod ST Bullies. While you're checking us out, check out all of our affiliates as well. Flyers High and Wide, they're on Twitter at FlyersHW. The 5 Minute Major podcast is on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod, as well as our pals over at the Hockey Focused, which is exactly how I just described it on Twitter at the Hockey Focus. Until next week, folks, and a new slate of games that they're probably going to lose them all. Try to enjoy it.
Bye now.